Well, first off, it's a privilege to be here. Very, very happy to spend some time talking about topics and subjects that are very dear to my heart. So, what does it take to achieve first oil?
Yes.
A lot of hard work. I think I'll start there. Really, it's about three big frames. Firstly, you have to discover the resource, and you've got to have a viable hydrocarbon system that can produce at the right quality, quantity, in the right situation, the reserves that we all want to produce. Secondly, you then have to have the financial and governance framework through PSA, production sharing agreements, or tax and royalty agreements that allows those hydrocarbons to be accessed on terms that are favorable, not just to the country, of course, that's very important, but to the companies, whether it be the joint venture developing the block or the service companies that will ultimately benefit, to be part of that bigger outcome. Thirdly, you need to build stuff. You need to drill wells. And sometimes that's almost the easier stuff compared to the first two. So those are the three big blocks. What I would say in terms of what is there to learn, that is stability of terms, clarity of steps to be taken, gives confidence for people to invest. And it's really about confidence to invest, because we do very big things, very complex things. And at times people lose sight of how complex the things we do are. And so if there's distractions or concerns about those through other matters, it can weigh very heavily in terms of pace, success, and outcomes. Well, we're just on starting our journey. We entered into the Namibian oil and gas business last year by our joint venture and our partnership with Rhino Resources, Namcor, and Chorus on PEL 85. We've had a very successful drilling campaign as a joint venture. We now have 3 discoveries on the block. So all 3 of the wells that we've drilled as exploration wells have encountered hydrocarbons. And we're really excited about that. Not only because we found what we were looking for, but because it allows the belief, the hope, and the investment to now move to the next stage. So we've got a very clear plan to work with our partners on the block to better understand what we have, position for ultimately studies, and then a financial investment decision. In the fullness of time, we're still working there. I can't give an exact date at this time. A final financial investment decision. And then, of course, all the framework around that needs to be built. And it needs to be built with and through the Namibian people, with Namibian hands, through Namibian infrastructure, through Namibian companies. Now, some of that needs to be brought in. What I mean by that is there's some very niche skills which are very specific to things, or technologies that no one country actually holds in its own right. I mean, the thing about the oil and gas business is the diversity of the supply chain. 20, 30 countries come together through the companies in those countries to frame an outcome. So it's a huge undertaking, but we are here to invest in Namibia. So I think local content rightly is the right and privilege of Namibia. And I say this with absolute conviction, because this is Namibian resource and it needs to be developed for the fulfillment and upliftment of the Namibian people. So the how then is the question. And there are so many jobs, if I use jobs as the reference point, there's so many jobs that are direct or indirect in the oil and gas business. Lawyers, catering, road construction, welders, hydraulics, engineers, drillers, reservoir, geophysicists, and so it goes on. And not all of that can be created at once. And I don't mean in any way to be dismissive by this statement, but there's more accessible, or shall we say, entry jobs that can come quicker in the oil and gas frame, which are around services, office services, accounting, catering provision, road transportation, marine services, etc., etc. These things can come quick. and they should and must come quick, because it makes no sense to import those. Not that the government would be happy with us if we propose that, which we will not do. But then there's the next wave of jobs, if I maybe badly but describe as professional jobs. I don't mean to differentiate so plainly as that, but the sort of petrotechnical professional jobs, which are multiple years of education, learning, experience, because we do big things with big investments and with big consequences if it goes wrong. So we need confidence as an industry that the people performing the roles understand what they do. If I take the example of our company, interesting, I got an email in my inbox today for me to sign off on our Azule's, albeit in Angola, our Azule's latest intake of interns, so graduates that we've interviewed. We have something like 5,000 graduates applying for about 50 to 60 intern roles. And it's enormously successful because people want to be part of it, and we want to give people part of that opportunity. So I would see those type of examples as how we start to invest in Namibian skills for Namibian people. So let's talk hypotheticals. There's theories here and speculations and beliefs and possibilities. Yeah, call it what you will. So I think with the known discovered resource, there's a mix of high and low GOR, light oil, a little bit more challenging because the reservoir characteristics are produced. But I think there are, by any measure, material resources discovered from a hydrocarbon perspective. And of course, you look at the very obvious, let's call it revenue stream, which is produce oil, sell oil, whether it be into the local market, if there's refining capability, I can come back to that, or externally in the international market. And then you start to unpeel various layers around gas and the gas value chain and the optionalities of gas. So I think the first step is around understanding, does Namibia just want to be a net exporter of crude oil, or does it want to establish its own refining base to refine products to sell internally, but also potentially externally beyond Namibia into the Southern African area? So that's one obvious place in terms of developing an energy infrastructure that reaches beyond the boundaries of the country itself. And then, of course, there's so many facets or parts of what you can do with gas. Now, I think in the first instance, the industry is thinking about processing gas and then re-injecting gas, because the investment cycles for gas tend to be much longer than oil. But you can see a world of gas pipelines transporting gas to shore for liquefaction, so for LNG, for export, or for transportation to interior regions. LPGs, the same, liquid petroleum gases. And then you can see fertilizer plants. You can see gas to liquid technologies like ammonia, still growing up a little bit across the world, but you can see that. You can see gas to power, not only to power Namibia itself, but maybe to this country to the south, right? That still burns a lot of coal, as I understand. So there's many ways you could see that infrastructure growing out. Of course, that's a vision, but that vision does take investment, and some of that investment is significant and multi-year. Example, you could see a world, if I use a number of LNG plants across the world, they tend to have multiple shippers that sign into a joint venture type of arrangement to allow processing of multiple blocks or pals, to use the Namibian language, to ship gas to that, to then ship onwards to international markets. So yeah, I think it's a very exciting place to be. I think Namibia is uniquely placed in that regard. The hub, shall we say, the possibility is very exciting. Yeah, well, first of all, we'll be there. So Azule Energy will be there. important conference for us. We've attended a good few times, and we will definitely be there again next year. So look, I think Namibia is now at the juncture, the next step in the journey. It certainly hasn't been easy to get this far, but I'll say the easy part is done, right? Which is discovering resource. Now, the true effort begins of how to raise financing, how to have legislative framework that truly enables outcomes. I'm not suggesting it doesn't, to be very clear, but how do you operationalize written words to outcomes that people are clear about? How do you then grow supply chains? How do you then build the skills? How do you then make the big investment decisions that the country wants? How do you then do that with pace to allow the industry to move forward, but also grow maybe not too quickly, that it's, I don't want to say fail, but is a chance that it becomes difficult to deliver. So I use that example to sort of build my point. And that is, I think this conference must really start to ask the tough questions of how. Not do we have, but how do we take the next steps? Because everyone, if we look at the other oil and gas companies that are in the basin, in the Orange Basin, everyone is at that very near final investment or very hard thinking how to achieve that. So I think that would be a very powerful space to explore in terms of what the next conference is about.